I never thought my marriage would end like this. London, a late evening after a drizzle. The light from the window spread across the wooden floor like a warm streak of water, and the small house at the end of the quiet street smelled faintly of Earl Grey tea, accompanied by the gentle tapping of a spoon on a cup. On the windowsill, a vase of chrysanthemums tilted its head slightly, as if it were tired after a long day. Jamie leaned against the cream-colored wall, looking through the frosted glass where the raindrops made a long streak. He was silent for a long time, until he spoke, so softly that if the music had been a little louder, no one would have heard. I never thought my marriage would end like this. The words were like a newly lit candle, short, warm, but immediately casting long shadows across the room. Amelia put the teacup down on its saucer, not looking at him. Her fingers gently stroked the edge of the tablecloth, then stopped at the small scratch where they had laughed as they had carelessly dragged their suitcases down the street. They had said, "Look, this is our new memory lane." Strangely, sometimes memories become cracks that never heal. They had lived a marriage that spanned many seasons: autumn mornings with the roads sparkling with wet leaves, summer afternoons with the laughter of children like ocean waves in the backyard, winter nights sitting together, listening to the crackling fire in the fireplace. There was so much to remember, but nothing to hold on to. Amelia took a deep breath, and somehow Jamie remembered the faint scent of almonds on her hand, the scent that had drawn him to the kitchen, to the table, to the sound of spoons, to this roof so many years ago. The key to change. The day they met, they talked about music like old friends. Amelia, in her light floral dress, talks about demos that tremble like a young heart learning to stand. Jamie talks about upcoming roles, about walking into a strange room and pretending to be someone else until your heart believes it's real. One night, they listen to Radiohead while it's pouring rain. She says it's like a stretched canvas, and he replies, "Maybe love is like that. A canvas stretched in time, sometimes distorted without you even noticing." Over the years, that canvas has taken on countless layers. A newborn's cry, a tiny hand grasping a father's confused finger for the first time, late dinners, fragrant plates of pasta from a half shot, magical moments when they turn off their phones to find peace. They grow up together, and sometimes, because of it, they lose each other. And then, the unusually busy seasons. Jamie was consumed by schedules, connecting flights, close-ups, interviews, quiet late nights on London sidewalks. Amelia wrote, recorded, deleted, wrote again. She took unfinished songs home, placed them beside the vase, hoping for a response, hoping for a look. But that look usually lingered in the mirror, where she found herself smiling at her reflection to keep from crying. Shadows on the wall. An artist's story is always accompanied by other names. Sometimes they are notes, sometimes just the color of a shirt. Sometimes they are shadows amplified by the spotlight. Dakota appears in Jamie's life as a colleague, a co-star, a friend who can speak his language in a scene that requires absolute trust. They understand each other through the language of the camera, know how to approach each other in the 7th second of the 12th shot, know how to compress a look into a line that doesn't need to be written. For Amelia, the hardest thing is not the ups and downs of gossip, because gossip is like dust on the road. The wind comes and goes, but the silence between them, long and anonymous. One night, when Jamie comes home late, she puts the phone in front of him with an open article. No accusations, no questions, just puts it down. Under the yellow light, they saw each other as two characters in a cramped frame. "I'm not jealous of anyone," she said, her voice calm as if humming a melody. "I'm just afraid that one day, when I come home, I won't find you anymore." Jamie was so tired that the only answer was silence. And silence, as everyone knows, is the most misunderstood sound. It makes people think they are understood, when in fact no words are spoken. Living room, where the chairs talk. The house had many chairs. A moss-green armchair where Jamie often sat to read the script, a stool next to the piano where Amelia used to sit and teach her to play her first chords. 2 wooden chairs placed next to the dining table, facing each other enough to see the emotions on each person's face. If chairs could talk, they would probably tell a lot about the short conversations, the long sittings without saying anything, the sleepy dawns with strong coffee, the sunsets where the child asks, "Mommy, is Daddy coming home for dinner?" One night, they sat across from each other as usual. Outside, the rain had stopped. Amelia opened the window. The sound of wet grass drifted into the room. She started to talk about a new song, but stopped mid-sentence. Jamie looked at his hands, remembering that summer, when she had taken him to a small festival where they had danced awkwardly and laughed loudly. He wanted to say, "We went too far from that festival." But instead, he just said, "Sorry." Amelia nodded slightly. "What are you sorry for?" "For letting work, flights, nameless fatigue, come between us. For not realizing the fragility of a hug. For letting this house learn too much silence." She smiled, a little sadly. "Silence is not bad. It's just that when you're silent for too long, you start telling yourself stories. And those stories aren't always true." Unsent letters. There are a few unsent letters in Amelia's desk drawer. Such letters are always half-baked, the words not yet sharp enough to express, the feelings too fresh to contain. There's one she writes, "I miss you on the mornings when you make the children laugh because the eggs are a little too hard." Another she writes, "I miss waiting for your text on rainy days, like waiting for a safe harbor." Another she writes to herself, "Don't confuse tiredness with love." Jamie has unfinished drafts too, phone messages, reflections, unposted notes, unsaid thank yous from home. Sometimes he writes, "I'm still grateful for this house because it gives me a safe place where I don't have to act." Sometimes he writes, "We can love each other but not be together anymore." That hurts, but it doesn't have to be a failure. Dakota, a name that appears often in the press, is here like a distant echo. Not a reason, but a mirror reflecting the constant worries of marriage, the insecurities, the broken jobs, the late nights at home while the other confides his sadness. There are days when Amelia wonders, if it weren't for the photo shoots, the promotions, would we be different? Then she replies, "We've been through different storms. Life is just a passing wind." Versus confession. "I never thought our marriage would end like this," Jamie repeats, but this time he looks deep into her eyes, as if to see their youth still standing there, on the wooden bridge at the beginning of summer. "Like this," he paused, meaning not by arguing, not by accusing, not by making a scene, but by quietly wearing ourselves down, by pulling a part of us back every day, half a step, then half a step, until the distance is big enough to be called distance. Amelia twisted the ring on her finger, then took it off, setting it on the table like a note in the song she'd just sung. "I didn't think it would come to this. But maybe growing up sometimes means knowing how to say goodbye while still wanting to cherish our memories. I want to remember you as the one who smiled so brightly during that awkward dance." In that moment, they were like standing in a family photo, soft, quiet, and painful. Jamie wanted to say something about Dakota, about how there were misunderstandings that couldn't be erased with a "no." But he knew Amelia didn't need a long list of denials. What she needed was to feel understood, respected in her grief. So he said, "I thank you for your kindness. And I'm sorry for the parts of me that are no longer there." London sky and light on the parquet. The day they broke the news to their closest friends, the London sky seemed to soften. There were no sensational headlines, no slamming doors, no suitcases dragged across the floor to create a new memory mark. They picked a morning with sunlight slanting through the curtains, the children still asleep in their rooms, and talked about how to organize their time, the routines they would maintain, how to teach their children that love was not tied to possession. "They'll understand," Amelia said, almost to herself, "because they've seen us treat each other well." Jamie nodded. He looked around the room, the moss-green armchair, the slightly off-key piano, the picture hanging in the hallway from their third-year trip to the beach. These things hadn't disappeared because of a decision by two adults. They'd simply changed light, changed places in memory. Dakota was still a distant echo. She didn't enter the house, didn't appear in the conversations tonight. But that name, like so many others, was a reason for outsiders to exaggerate, and for those involved, it was just a mirror reflecting old wounds. Amelia understood that, and it was that understanding that helped her keep her balance as she crossed the bridge. The rest. There are loves that can start again like spring. There are also loves that, when they end, need a quiet afternoon to put aside. Jamie packed up a few basic things. A few books, a few light coats, an old camera. He stood for a long time in front of the nursery door, not opening it, just resting his forehead on the wood and smiling, as if touching the memory of the game of hide and seek. He had so many things to tell his child, but he knew that the most important thing would be how he showed up, on time, complete, undistracted, in the days ahead. Amelia sat at the piano, touching the keys. She tried the old chords, then changed her voice. There were songs that, if sung too high, would tire the listener. Lowering her voice by a half step, the timbre naturally became warmer. She understood, maybe life was like that. Not everything had to be at its peak to be called real. Sometimes, the truth was revealed in a sigh of relief and a cup of warm tea. When Jamie walked out the door, it was drizzling again. He turned to look at Amelia. She nodded, smiling softly like thin smoke. No need for hugs, no need for promises, no need for it's okay. Because they knew, okay didn't come from promises, but from how people faced sadness every day. Thank you, he said. Thank you, she replied. The last letter, unsent. That night, Amelia opened a drawer, took out a pen and a piece of paper. She wrote a letter, knowing she probably wouldn't send it. Jamie. Some days I think love is a train, we get on at the first station and hope to arrive together at the last. It turns out, sometimes we get off at different stations, to work, to dream, to have long silences. But that doesn't make me think differently about the train. It's still beautiful, because it has taken us through so many beautiful scenes. I'm not mad at the names people call me, nor am I mad at the nights you come home late. I'm just sad that there were times when we didn't know how to name each other's sadness. If one day you read these lines, whether in your memory or in a story you tell somewhere, remember, there was a woman who loved you with kindness. And when she walked out this door, she chose to take gratitude with her. Ah! She folded the letter and put it in the wooden box where she kept postcards, movie tickets, and faded photographs. The vase of daisies by the window swayed in the afternoon breeze. Amelia turned off the living room light, leaving the porch light on. Down the street, a taxi drove by, silent as a comma. We learned to say goodbye. A few weeks later, they met again in a familiar cafe, this time as two old friends. The coffee was bitter, the sun was bright, and they talked about books, about their children's schools, about planned trips. Neither of them mentioned, if only, because they both knew that each, if only, was just a thin thread. Dakota, who had appeared in the newspaper a few times, was no longer a shadow on their wall. The news still poured in, but in their hearts, the water had calmed. I wrote a new article, Amelia said, as if showing off a beautiful photograph. It's about learning to leave without leaving any worries behind. I want to hear, Jamie smiled. And if you'll let me, I want to tell a story about two people who learned to hold each other in their memories as tenderly as possible. They left in different directions, but both knew that this street would meet them again, on a day with the faint smell of toast, or on a rainy night soaked with sleeves. And the only thing left for them was that warm nod. We lived our lives, and now, we choose to live well. Afterward, the music changes again. On the windowsill, the vase of daisies finally bloomed. The morning sun shone on the wooden door, painting a small streak of light. Jamie picked up his son on time, smiling, telling a short story about a man who learned to boil eggs without burning the edges. Amelia laughed, a rare laugh that brightened the day. She handed him her raincoat, whispered a warning, and watched him until the gate closed. I never thought my marriage would end like this, Jamie had said that quiet rainy night. But maybe, like this, was more than just an end. It was also a blank page, new lines written in simple words. There were no traitors in this story. Only people who had tired of loving the wrong way, then learned to love the right way, to love their children, to love memories, to love peace. Somewhere in the city, a song rang out, slow, warm. Amelia, at the piano, closed her eyes, changed the notes. Jamie, on the porch, looked up, saw the sky gradually lighten. And between them, in the most neutral place of the human heart, was a gentle greeting. Thank you both for coming here together.